Prismari Performance is pretty good right out of the box, but I believe that there are 10 cards that we could swap out for under $20 that would make this deck much more competitive. Let's take a look at Prismari Performance and the 10 cards that I would upgrade for this Precon deck, and the video starts right now. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below. Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I'm Joel. We're going to look at Prismari Performance and the 10 cards that I would upgrade for under $20. But before we do, if you would, go down there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you stick around to the end of the video, we're going to go over 3 cards that are a little bit out of our budget, but I think should stay on your radar. Let's take a look at these upgrades. Prismari Performance is a spellcasting deck led by Zaffai, Thunder, Conductor, 1 red, 1 blue, 2 other for a 1/4 human shaman that's got Magecraft that says whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, scry 1. If that spell's mana value is 5 or greater, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, and if that spell's mana value is 10 or greater, Zaffai deals 10 damage to an opponent chosen at random. We're going to lean into the spellcaster aspect of the main commander of this deck for these upgrades. I'll talk a little bit about it as we're going through, but we're going to lean away from the storm building strategy, but I will have some notes of stuff to keep on your radar if that's the way you want to build this deck. The first card that I want to talk about replacing is Erratic Cyclops, a red and 3 other for a Cyclops Shaman that's a trampling 0/8, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. This is a fine creature. It's not that great, and so that's why it would be one of my first chopped. It is a 0/8 unless you have an instant or sorcery, and I would rather my creatures be able to attack regardless of anything else that I'm doing, or be providing a lot of synergistic value, and I just don't think Erratic Cyclops does that. So for just $3, I want to go out and acquire Archmage Emeritus, 2 blue, 2 other for a human wizard 2/2. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. One of my favorite things to do in Commander, and one of the best things to be doing in Commander, is drawing cards. And if we're going to be casting a lot of spells, we can scry with Zaffai and then draw with Archmage, depending on how we stack those triggers. And so I think that these two have some excellent synergy. This is a new card from Strixhaven for this deck, and at just $3, I think it's an auto include. I would definitely build this in there ASAP. Living Lore is the next card I want to look at. 1 blue, 3 other for a Star Avatar. It enters the battlefield, you exile an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, and its power and toughness are equal to the exiled card's converted mana cost. When it deals combat damage, you can sacrifice it, and if you do, you can cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. There's no avoidance on this creature, and that's what bums me out. There's no trample to help you deal that damage. There's no like unblockable or menace or anything like that. And I mean, what are you going to be removing from your graveyard? A 3 CMC, maybe 5 CMC, maybe get a 5/5 for 4. Then you can recast that 5 CMC spell if you can deal some damage with Living Lore. It's just too many hoops to jump through to make me like this card, and so I want to swap it out for Murmuring Mystic. It's another 4 mana blue creature that's a 1/5, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. Straight up. I want things to be happening when we are casting good instant and sorcery spells. Zaffai helps us do that, Murmuring Mystic helps us do that, and starts putting some power on the battlefield. Murmuring Mystic is only a 50-cent card, and I think well worth the pickup to replace Living Lore. I want to talk about another creature here, and that's Crackling Drake, 2 red, 2 blue for a star 4 flying drake. Crackling Drake's power is equal to the total number of instants and sorceries you own in exile and in your graveyard, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Again, this is a fine creature. If you aren't hurting for creatures, if you don't want to cut Crackling Drake, I don't blame you, but I do think it's an easy cut to replace with something stronger, because at the end of the day, you're just going to have a high power flyer. It enters the battlefield, it does replace itself. That's kind of nice, but I think that there's more synergistic ways we can lean, and that is Niv Mizzet Perrin. Red, 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 blue, blue, blue for a 5/5 dragon wizard. Can't be countered. It has flying. Whenever you draw a card, it deals a damage to any target. So players, planeswalkers, creatures, anything. And whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. A player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you get to draw a card. Any of your opponents, you're drawing cards off of this. You'll start to notice I want to be drawing cards, I want to be casting spells, and I want the permanents that I have on the battlefield to take advantage of the fact that I am casting spells and give me further value. Niv Mizzet Perrin's a $3 card right now, and I really think it's well worth the pickup. I think it belongs in this deck. Plus, it's like a secondary commander if somebody else happens to show up with Zaffai to your commander pod, and you got to swap commanders. Let's look at Aether Gale next. You notice if you've watched a lot of these upgrade videos from me that I don't really like return effects. Unless they're on a permanent and we can activate it multiple times like Crystal Shard, Aether Gale, it just has this one-time effect, returning 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands, 2 blue, 3 others, so a 5-cost sorcery. At the very least, it does activate Zaffai so that we are creating a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. However, I just wish it had more permanents. I would rather remove the creatures from the board altogether by playing something like Blasphemous Act, which is a huge CMC. It's already in the deck though, so let's swap out Aether Gale for the Mirari Conjecture. This is just another synergy play for 5 mana, but in the first story version of this, I don't know what to call it, lore counter, first saga, first chapter, I don't know, I'm going off the rails here. Let me know down in the comments what you call these things. But in the first one, you return an instant from your graveyard to your hand. In the second one, you return a target sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. And then in the third one, until end of turn, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, copy it, and you can choose new targets for those copies. I love the Mirari Conjecture. It's recursion, it's longevity, it's copying, it's more value. This is the kind of permanent that I want to be playing in this deck. It's a 50-cent card. Really easy to pick this up. It's a Dominaria rare. Make sure that you've got Mirari Conjecture in this deck. I don't think you're going to hate seeing it. Call the Skybreaker is a card that has been in these precons as long as I can remember. 7 mana for a sorcery to create a 5/5 blue and red elemental creature token with flying right onto the battlefield, and it's got retrace. That is the value of this card, is that you can cast it from your graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its other costs, so you don't even have to exile it when you do retrace it. As long as you've got 7 mana and you're drawing lands, you can be discarding those lands, paying the 7 mana, and putting another 5/5 onto the battlefield, which also triggers Zaffai to create a 4/4 elemental also onto the battlefield. So for 7 mana, you're getting 9 power. This is not the worst card that I'm going to cut from this deck. This is actually a pretty good card. If you want to leave this card in, I can completely understand that. However, I would just rather put more targeted removal in this deck. There is not a lot of it in this deck, and I think that you need a little bit more than it does provide. Reality Shift exiles a target creature straight up, and then they can have a 2/2. That's fine. We don't care. We just want to exile a creature for 2 mana straight up. Goodbye. Can't see again. We don't want you around. This is probably the one I'm going to get the most hate in the comments about, but I really think that this is a good swap. Just take out a big CMC spell, put in an instant speed 2 mana exile effect. Very, very good. It doesn't trigger either of Zaffai's abilities, but you still get to scry one if Zaffai's on the battlefield. And at only $1, I really think that you should put this targeted removal in there. Jake and I think that everybody should be running more targeted removal in their EDH decks as it is. Serum Visions, 1 mana, draw a card, scry 2. This card just isn't impactful enough to me. I understand why it's in here. This is one of those cards that if you want to play the Storm strategy, this would be a good inclusion in cards like it. Having cheap spells that replace themselves, that is going to really help you get your Storm count up so that you can take advantage of that. So look for that if you want to play the Storm strategy. However, with this build, we're not leaning towards that, so I want to cut Serum Visions for Mystic Confluence. It's a 5 mana spell, so it triggers Zaffai's ability to create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. Plus, we get to choose 3 different modes with this card. 5 mana instant speed, choose 3, and you can choose the same mode more than once. You can use this as a counter spell. You can return creatures, which, you know, I don't love, but in a pinch it can be good, and if it's included, whatever. And you can draw a card. Instant speed, 5 mana. You create a 4/4. You're countering spells, you're bouncing stuff, you're drawing stuff. The versatility here is just insane. Mystic Confluence is a $4 card, so it is the most expensive card that I am recommending you put in this deck. But I do highly recommend you find a copy of this card and you find a card to cut for it. Doesn't exactly have to be that Serum Visions, but I do think that you need to put Mystic Confluence in the Zaffai deck. I think it fits really, really well. The next card that I want to talk about is some targeted removal, but it's only 5 damage. Fiery Fall is a 6 mana instant spell that deals 5 damage to a target creature. I wish this said creature or planeswalker. Obviously, I wish this said any target, but for 6 mana, 5 to a creature isn't bad. Plus, it has basic land cycling, so if you get it early, you can pitch it, you can go get a land out of your deck, put that into your hand. I don't hate this spell. Again, these commander decks in this set of precons are actually all pretty good right out of the box, like I said in the opening. But if I'm looking for cuts to upgrade the deck and make more synergistic plays, I think that Fiery Fall is a decent one just because it's only creatures that you can deal this damage to. And I would replace it with Supplant Form. 6 mana instant spell to bounce a creature to its owner's hand. Joel, you just said you don't like bounce spells. Yeah, but look at this combat trick. For 6 mana, we're bouncing a creature to its owner's hand, and we're putting a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. So we can copy somebody's really powerful attacking commander, something like that. Plus, it's a 6 mana spell, so we are triggering the ability of Zaffai to create a 4/4 token. For 6 mana, we're going to create a 4/4 token. We're going to bounce their attacker back to its hand once it's already been declared. We're going to create a token of that attacker that we bounced back, and we're going to use that token to block and kill their other attacker and just get a ton of value out of one card. Only $1 for Supplant Form. This is a great one to pick up, and I think it has a home in this deck for sure. Seething Song is another card that plays really well in Storm decks. 3 mana to add 5 mana to your mana pool. This is the other type of card that you want to look for if you're trying to build Storm in EDH. You want cards that cantrip or replace themselves, allow you to draw as one of the effects of the spell, and you want spells that create more mana than it costs to play them. This is basically just pay 3, put 5 into your mana pool, increase your storm count by 1. Very good for that, but again, not really the strategy that we're leaning into with this set of upgrades, so I think we should put Recurring Insight into it. 6 mana for a sorcery to draw cards equal to the number of cards in target opponent's hand, and it's got Rebound, so it recasts itself at the beginning of your next upkeep. Just choose the opponent with the most cards in hand, cast Recurring Insight for 6 mana, draw up, fill up your hand, and then at the beginning of the next upkeep, you get to do it again for free, and then you're fully untapped and ready to rock with a full hand of cards. You'll notice that a lot of spells that I'm targeting for this deck take advantage of Zaffai's ability to create 4/4s if the CMC is 5 or higher. I'm a huge fan of Rebound as a strategy with Zaffai, and Recurring Insight, drawing cards. You already know how I feel about drawing cards. I love it. So that's definitely a swap I want to make. Fiery Encore is a new card that is in this deck that I think we could swap out. 5 mana, for a sorcery, discard a card, then draw a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, it deals damage equal to that card's mana value to target creature or planeswalker, and it's got Storm. This is a card that you want to leave in if you're going the Storm strategy, because it has Storm, and this could really add up in the aggregate. However, if we're not really trying to trigger Storm a bunch of times, maybe 2, maybe 3, not really a huge fan of this when we could get more value for our punch. So I want to take out Fiery Encore, and I want to put Past in Flames in here. Past in Flames is a $2 card. Each instant and sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, and Past in Flames has flashback. This is definitely a spell that we want to play. This is recursion. This is longevity. This is how you win commander games right here. $2 for Past in Flames, well worth it, and you can swap out Fiery Encore if you're not going the Storm route. Prismari Campus is the last card of the upgrades I want to look at before we get into the higher value cards at the end. The Campus cards are going to be the 10th card in all of these upgrade videos because I just don't really like them. Enters the battlefield tapped. It does tap for your colors, but paying for tap to scry 1, it's just not a lot of good value. There's better stuff that you can do on lands, and honestly, I might even rather have straight up comes into play tapped and scry automatically like a Temple, or even gain a life over these Campus cards. So let's take out Prismari Campus, spend $1, and go get Mystic Sanctuary. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more islands. You should be able to pull that off in a game of Commander, and when it enters the battlefield untapped, you can put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. You're only playing 2 colors in this deck, and so the ability for you to get 3 islands onto the battlefield, there's a very good chance that you'll be able to pull that off. And again, recursion, longevity, get those instants and sorceries that you've been casting, that you've been exiling creatures with Reality Shift. Get that card back, cast it again. That's exactly what we want to be doing with this deck, is casting a lot of great spells over and over. Those are the 10 cards that I would swap out for under $20. Let's look at 3 more cards that I think you should have on your radar that are a little bit out of our budget. The first of which is Temporal Trespass. I tried to look for 10 CMC spells so that we can trigger Zaffai's bottom ability down there to deal 10 damage to an opponent chosen at random. But there's not a lot of good playable 10 mana spells in EDH, y'all. Temporal Trespass is one of those, though. 11 mana, take an extra turn after this, and then exile Temporal Trespass. So you can't flash this back. However, this is one of those cheat spells that I really think are great in Zaffai. If you can have a really expensive spell that has an ability like Delve on it, each card you exile from your graveyard while casting the spell pays for 1. It's going to check and see the CMC, the total CMC of the card. But if you can exile 8 cards from your graveyard while you're playing Temporal Trespass, you only have to pay 3 mana for it and you're good to go. Trespass is a $6 card. I was going to actually put it in this video and try and make it so that I had $6 in one card and then like a bunch of other dollar cards, but I just wanted to put it on the higher value upgrade so we could put some heavier hitters in those $1 and $2 and $3 slots. But this should be on your radar as one of the very first pickups that you make when you can get that card. Primal Amulet is the next one. 4 mana for an artifact, instance, and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Primal Amulet. Then if there are 4 or more charge counters on it, you can remove those counters and transform it, and it transforms into Primal Wellspring, which taps to add a mana of any color to your mana pool, and when that mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery, you copy it and you can choose new targets for that copy. Primal Wellspring is exactly what we want to be doing in this deck, right? Casting, copying, triggering Zaffai, getting 4/4s onto the battlefield. This is such an excellent card. It's $10, but I definitely think it has a home in Prismari Performance. And the last card that I want to look at is Thousand Year Storm. 6 mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it for each other instant and sorcery spell you've cast before it this turn. You can choose new targets for the copies. I told you we were going to talk about Storm as a strategy in this deck, and this is literally it. The word is in the title of the card. If you want to play Storm in the Zaffai deck, go pick up a copy of this card. It's $10. It's a fantastic enchantment, and you will absolutely pop off if you can resolve this card and then get to storming. Those are the upgrades I would make to Prismari Performance. Let's close the book. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below which cards I missed. How are you going to upgrade Prismari Performance? Are you excited about this deck? I'd love to talk to you about it down below. If you would, on your way out, hit that like button if you liked the video, hit the dislike button if you didn't. And other than that, I'm tapped out. I'll catch you later.